We are on Mem Ches Amud Aleph. We are in middle of the page. Yanai Malka. Everyone have it? Yanai Malka. There was Mem Ches 48a. Yanai Malka. We had a king. There was a king called Yanai. Rashi says he was from the house of the Hashmonaim, from the family of the Hashmonaim. As you know, during the second Beis Hamikdash, after the miracle of Hanukkah, which happened through the hands of the Hashmonaim, there was a king, and the Beis Hamikdash after Hanukkah, Beis Hamikdash lasted for about 200 years before it was destroyed, and there was a king Yanai, and Yanai did a terrible, terrible thing. He killed out the Chachamim, he killed out many of the rabbis, and there was some rabbis that were, at least we find at least one rabbi that was hidden. So he killed the rabbis, and so he was sitting with a number of his men. He was sitting with a number of his men, Umalkosa, and he was sitting with his wife, the queen. Krichu riftu b'hadadi adadi. They had eaten bread together. They had a meal of bread. And we know when you have a meal of bread, you have to do there were a number of people. There were a number of Jewish people there at the meal. And what happened was, the Gemara says, "With the Kotel Hul Rabbanan, since Yanai killed the Chachamim, the rabbis, lahavili inish lebruche lahu. There was no person that was there that was able to say the Birkat Hamazon for them. What does that mean? Either they themselves did not know the proper text how to say Birkat Hamazon, and when you have a zimun, as we know, there's a special bracha, there's a special blessing that's also said by the guest, and the king wanted the blessing. So it's amazing. Here you have a person who killed so many of the Rabbanan, but yet, he's interested in the Birkat Hamazon. He's interested in the blessing, and he's interested in the blessing. So he says, "Man yavla gavra de mevarach lan." Who could give us a person that could say the Birkat Hamazon, that could go with say the Birkat Hamazon for us? There's a commentary called Slach that was written by the Nod de Yehuda, and he says, what was the problem? How could it be that Yanai, he was the king and he also acted as Kohen Gadol? How could it be that he didn't know how to say the Birkat Hamazon? And all the people that sat at his table, that they didn't know the Birkat Hamazon, that they needed someone to say the Birkat Hamazon for them. So the Eitz Yosef says that he knew how to say Birkat Hamazon, but he wanted a great person. Like the halacha is, when you have a zimun, you honor the great person to lead the Birkat Hamazon. He wanted a great person to give him a bracha. That special bracha that we said that a guest gives the Hiratzon, Shelo Yevush, Balabayit, Balamazeh, like we had in the Gemara early. That's one of the answers. Here, Solomon, that's what he wanted. That's one of the approaches of the Achronim, of the Mefarshim. So, Amallah, that's what he said to the Bisu. He said to his wife, we would love to have someone. I would love to have someone who could say the Birkat Hamazon for us, and give a special bracha. Amrale, his wife said to him, Ishtabali, swear to me, if I bring you somebody, if I bring you one of the Chachamim, swear to me that you wouldn't cause him trouble, you wouldn't hurt him, and so on and so forth. So that's what she asked of her husband. So, and she knew that if he would swear.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning, Michael. Morning, Mike. So the Gemara says, Ishtavalei. We're on the Gemara, Mike, on Mem Ches Amud Aleph. We're in the middle of a Gemara that there was a king Yanai, And Yanai went ahead and he ate bread and he was looking for someone to lead the Birkat Hamazon. He had killed the Chachamim, and Rashi says the reason why he killed the Chachamim because the Chachamim said, see, he was acting as a Kohen Gadol, and the Chachamim said that he really was unfit to be the Kohen Gadol. He was pasul. Therefore, therefore he killed the rabbis. And yet he wanted someone to lead the Birkat Hamazon. And his wife said, swear to me that if I bring you somebody, you won't hurt him. Moni Morris. So Ishtabale, he swore to her. She brought Shimon Shatach, one of the great rabbis of Shimon Shatach, who was her brother. And she, his wife, the queen, had hid her brother. When Yanai was killing the Chachamim, she hid her brother. And she said, if I swear to me, if I'll bring somebody, you won't hurt him. And she brought Shimon Shatach. Otfei ben didei lidida. Yanai HaMelech placed Rav Shimon Shatach between himself and his wife. Amalei. So Yanai says, Chazait kama yikara vidnalach. Do you see how much honor that I give you? I'm not sitting next to the queen. I'm placing you between me and the queen. You're in the center. You're right next to me. Look at the great honor. Amalei. Rav Shimon Shatach says, Lav at kamokutli. It's not your honor, but you're doing to me. It's not the great honor. It's el araitahi democratly. The Torah is what gives a person honor. The ksiv. That means the Torah is the thing that honors the person who engages in the study of the Torah. And the explanation of the pasuk when it says Sasaleha means when you go ahead and you're very exact, when you focus in on the words of the Torah, you try to understand the words of the Torah. As a result of that, it will raise you, and not only that, it will bring you honor. When you and the pasuk says, when you embrace the Torah. Good morning, Akiva. When someone embraces the Torah, like when you hug the Torah,
Good morning.
when you embrace it, and when you attach yourself constantly to the Torah, that's what will give you honor. So he says to the king, that's the real honor comes through being connected to the Torah. And Amar Allah. So Yanai HaMelech says to his wife, look, Kachazit de lo mekabel marut. Do you see? He doesn't accept my ruleship, that I am the king. He's already saying, I'm not the one. I, the king, Yanai, is not the one who's giving honor. It's the Torah that gives honor, so to speak. That I'm not. What you do is not. I don't look at it. I'm not respecting what you're doing. The way I respect it, I respect what God gives to me of the Torah. So he looked at it as an insult. He looked at it as if you're not accepting my ruleship. You're not taking my honor, as if to say you're not showing me respect. Now, he's very upset. Was probably Rav Shimon Shatach is very upset at Yanai for what Yanai did. Such tragic that he killed the rabbi. So many rabbis he killed. So he's not. See, therefore he's trying to most probably not give that type of appreciation to Yanai. For Yanai, when Yanai wants to give him honor, you did such a terrible thing. So he's not accepting, so to speak, and just accepting and saying, okay, thank you so much for the great honor that you gave to me. Look at the terrible thing that you have done. Yovle kosel lebruche. They gave Rav Shimon Shatach a cup of wine to say the Birkat Hamazon. As we know, when you say Birkat Hamazon, it's brought down. It's ideal to say it over a cup of wine, right? When you make a zimun, it's mitzvah min hamucha. You're not, there's a question in the Gemara: are you obligated to do zimun over a cup of wine? The halacha seems to indicate you're not out. It seems to be that you're not obligated, but the way the Chafetz Chaim says it's mitzvah min hamucha. It's ideal to go ahead when you have a zimun. It's more ideal to have it over a cup of wine. So here he gives Yanai gives Shimon Shatach a cup of wine to lead the zimun. Now he didn't give him anything to eat. He gave him nothing to eat, and he's already asking him to lead the what? To lead the zimun. So he ate nothing. Now what do you do by zimun? Zimun, the leader calls out to the other members, Nevarech she'achanu mishalo. Let us give a bracha to Hashem, who we've eaten from Hashem. We've eaten from his produce. But I haven't eaten anything. How can I go ahead and say the bracha, Nevarech she'achanu mishalo? I should call out to the other members, Nevarech she'achanu mishalo. They should respond, Baruch she'achanu mishalo, when I did not eat from anything. Should I say, instead of saying Baruch she'achalnu mishalo, blessed be the one that we ate, should I say the text, blessed be the one that Yanai and his colleagues ate from? Baruch she'achal Yanai. Is it clear, Solomon, what he's saying? Right? The Baruch she'achal Yanai mishalo. So what happened? He drank the cup of wine that was given to him. That first cup of wine he drank. So now drinking, we know the halacha says drinking is like eating. You could say, achila, shiyas b'chal achila. We had that halacha that we said yesterday. We said that if, let's say, you have 7 people that had bread, we spoke out yesterday, in order to make a zimun of 10, you need 7 to have bread and 3 to eat or drink something, right? The Shulchan Aruch says that 3 water does not count as drinking. You have to drink something besides water, any other drink besides water. So meaning we look at drinks just like food, because when you respond to the zimun, what is your response? Baruch she'achalnu mishalo. Blessed be the one that we ate from. If you had a drink, how could you respond Baruch? You had a drink of orange juice. How could you respond Baruch she'achalnu? The answer is eating and drinking are part of. I ate. I drank. Drinking it's a part of the same family, and it's you could say the word she'achalnu when it comes to drinking. Yes.
We mentioned. So it seems like the Gemara said that there's 8 people who ate bread, 2 people who ate vegetables.
Or 7. The halacha says 7 had bread and 3 had vegetables, or 3 would have a drink besides water. That's good. You can make a zimun with the name of Nevarech Elokeinu.
What's the ruling? Just 3 people.
So very good. So zimun of 3 people. The Shulchan Aruch has 3 opinions. Opinion number 1. All 3 need to have bread, because you're creating a zimun, meaning there's a difference. To create a zimun requires more than going from going to create it the Shem Hashem of 10. Because when you go to say the Shem Hashem, to make it 10, you already have the zimun. You already have people that ate bread. You already have a minimum of 7 that ate bread. So therefore, you don't need as much. Therefore, you don't need 10 to have bread. You can have, as long as you have 7, a clear majority, and then you have another 3 that ate or drank, that's good enough to say Hashem Hashem. However, but to create the zimun, there is an obligation of zimun. The first opinion of Shulchan Aruch says all 3 have to have bread. The second opinion says you can have 2 that have bread, and the third guy has mezonot. And the third opinion of Shulchan Aruch is that the third guy could even have vegetables, or that would mean drink or anything besides water, according to that. The Mechaber, for the Svardim, the way the Mechaber writes is very interesting. He says, because there is this question, who you could count in for the zimun of 3, which is not clear. Even though by the Zeman of 10, it is very clear. 7 to wash and 3 eat or drink, that's fine. But when it comes to the Zeman of 3, there's 3 different opinions. So if you have 2 people eating, don't invite it, don't call over the guy. In general, you say 2 people eating bread, there's a mitzvah to call another guy in to eat bread with you. So then you can make a zimun. But don't just go ahead and invite him to eat some other food besides bread, because then you're getting into a question whether you can make a zimun or not. If you went ahead and he ate with you, then you could count them in. You would make the zimun. But halacha l'maaseh, that's why the Shulchan Aruch writes it. That you should not invite the third guy in to eat with you if he's not going to have bread. But the Chafetz Chaim writes that the Ashkenazim at least say are even the Chatchila. If the guy says he doesn't want to eat bread, we will invite him to eat other foods and make a zimun. Even with vegetables, according to that, if he went ahead and he joined into the zimun, he had a third person and he went ahead and he had some vegetables, you can make a zimun of 3.
You have to wash to be considered part of someone's bread. What if someone said I'm watching you without that?
Right. If a guy said that most of the time, he's still considered he's part of the zimun. The fact that he did not wash his hands, he had bread, he has to go ahead and he's part of the zimun. Right. The guy, for whatever reason, didn't wash his hands. He ate bread. He's still part of. And the same thing would be if a guy ate bread and he didn't say a bracha on the bread. Right. You still could count them into zimun. It's not like having not kosher food. If he had not kosher food, meaning if the guy had bread that was dipped in pork sauce or whatever, then you can't make a zimun with a guy who ate not kosher.
Because I feel like a lot of Ashkenazi people, I heard say like, did you wash? They ask.
Because they mean when they say, did you wash, they want to, that's indicative that you have bread. And they don't mean to say, if the guy didn't wash and he had bread, he still has, you can count them into the zimun. They only say, did you wash? It's just this, that's how you refer to having bread. Because everybody who washes means you had bread. You know, we'll take out the Yalkut Yosef in the Kuf Tzadik Zayin, Sif Beis. Let's see how they write it. Kuf Tzadik Zayin, Sif Beis. He writes, let's see if he had those halachas over here. Kuf Tzadik Zayin, Sif Beis. He says 7 people had bread, 3 had vegetables. You could join them in for 10, but 6 no. 6 to 4 doesn't work. And then he says here now he has first he brings the first shita. You cannot make a zimun on someone who ate less than a kazayit of bread. Right. Another point is now, and some say even if the third guy did not have bread, he only had mizonot, it's good enough. And the third opinion says even any food is good enough. So therefore, if you have 2 people that ate and the third guy comes in, if the third person comes in, if you're able to go in and tell the third guy, come on, could you eat some bread with us? By the way, and it's clear, he says, has to be a kazayit of bread. It's not good enough just to have a little bite of bread. You know, you need a certain shear to eat, you know, could you please, could you go wash? Could you join us to wash? And he goes in and he washes, fine. That's a mitzvah. That's a mitzvah to get the third guy to wash, to join the 2 people. Now, if he does not want to eat bread and he's prepared to join the zimun, you're allowed to give him bread to eat, fruits or vegetables or a cup of wine. And see, it's interesting why he emphasizes a cup of wine. Or why not some other type of drink? You know what I'm saying? Or a cup of wine, and he can join them for a zimun, which is a little different than what the Shulchan Aruch says. It's interesting that Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yalkut Yosef, the way here is brought down, he says if he doesn't want to eat bread and he's prepared to join them for a zimun, you're allowed to give him. That language is a little different than the Shulchan Aruch, because the language of the Shulchan Aruch was, his language was let's see. This was Siman Kuf. Let's see the language. Kuf Sadig. Zion Sif Beis. What was his language? Two people eat bread. If you get him to eat bread, fine. If he doesn't want, he says, don't give him to drink. Not other. If it happened that you gave him, then he could join in with you, right? But the here language he's saying is a little bit more lenient. That if the third guy doesn't want to eat bread and he wants to join it, you're allowed to give him. Okay, so that's the story of again. The ideal thing is the third guy should eat bread. Therefore, according to all opinions, you make a zimun. But if he's not going to eat bread, you can give him some other food, and he could go ahead and make a zimun. Ideally, the second order would be mizonot, and the third thing would be something else. You know, interesting. We find interesting also sometimes the Shulchan Aruch, let's say by Suda Shlishit, right? Suda Shlishit. How do you fulfill the mitzvah of Suda Shlishit? So the first opinion Shulchan Aruch is you have to eat bread. But then there's another opinion that says you can fulfill it you can fulfill the Suda Shlishit with mizonot. And then another opinion says it's not mizonot, you can have fish or meat. And the last opinion is that you can have the Muslim opinion is you can have vegetables. But the Shulchan Aruch is still very you definitely have to have bread. Definitely supposed to have bread for Suda Shlishit. Really, it's only if you're not going to have bread, let's say you're too stuffed or whatever it is, but then you'll have something filled with some other thing. You know, the Shulchan Aruch said, "Ha-chacham einav berosho." The smart man has eyes in his head. He has foresight, so to speak, and he makes sure he leaves room from the meal that he eats by the lunch Suda Shabbat. He leaves room that he should be able to have a proper Suda Shlishit. I sometimes say the dessert makes all the difference. If you skip dessert Shabbat day, by lunch, hopefully you'll have a nice appetite for Suda Shlishit. I mean, you can have dessert too, by the way, but just keep that in mind. Okay, the Gemara said, so what happened was he went ahead and he drank the cup of wine because he wanted to say Baruch Shachalem Mishalom. So he says Shasu Lai Kosa. He drank the cup of wine and Yovale Kosa Achrona Baruch. They gave him another cup of wine and he led the benching. Have a great day. He led the benching. He led the zimun on another cup of wine, on the second cup of wine. The Gemara is going to take issue with Shimon Shatach, and they're going to say that we don't hold like this opinion because what did Shimon Shatach do? He said Birkat HaMazon without eating any bread. What did he do? He took a cup of wine. He drank a cup of wine. He didn't eat bread. And then he's saying Birkat HaMazon. He's leading in Birkat HaMazon. And what is he doing? Because he's being motzi everybody else with the Birkat HaMazon. He's saying Birkat HaMazon for everybody without having bread. And the Gemara is going to say that you can't do it. What would be the reason why he did that? I presume the reason is the something called arvut. We have responsibility for each other. Every Jew, right, Mike? Right, Yosef Tzaddik. Right? Every Jew is responsible for each other. And because you're responsible for me, I'm responsible for you. Right, Morris? Am I right? We're responsible for each other, and therefore, you have to protect me from sin. You have to make sure I don't sin, because you have to make sure. What?
And from Shatnez too, Rabbi, like protected me.
That's right, Shatnez. We're responsible for each other, making sure no one's wearing Shatnez. You got to help each other out. So what's the story? So the story is, technically on a Torah level, I could say Birkat HaMazon for you, even if I didn't eat anything. It's a fascinating idea. I don't need to eat anything to say Birkat HaMazon for someone else on a Torah level. That's what Rabbeinu Yonah says. Because I have to make sure if you ate bread and you were satiated, you have a mitzvah to say Birkat HaMazon. But I, as a Jew, have a responsibility to make sure that you do your mitzvah. And if you have difficulty saying the Birkat HaMazon, I can say the Birkat HaMazon for you. And that would cover you, even though I ate nothing. You shomea koneh, you heard me say it, you get the mitzvah. It's as if you said it, I'm saying it for you, you're listening, you're answering, amen. You're listening? It's like you said it. The Rabbanan say that that's not good enough. It's not good enough that I should just say Birkat HaMazon for you if I didn't eat anything. So what did the Rabbanan say? The Rabbanan say, I need to eat. So the halacha states that I need to eat bread. And how much bread do I need to eat? I need to eat a kazayit of bread in order for me to go ahead and say Birkat HaMazon for you. But it could be Shimon Shatach held that you don't need to eat bread as long as you eat something, eat or drink something. Like here, we drank a cup of wine. So we said that's meaning. What's the purpose why you need to eat? Meaning, because the reason why you need to eat something in order to say Birkat HaMazon for someone else is because since you're doing zimun, and the zimun says Baruch She'achal Nevarech She'achal Mishalo, you're giving it. Let's give a bracha to the one that we ate from. So that means you had to. So therefore, you have to eat something or drink something. But who says you need to go ahead and? But the Shimon Shata says maybe you don't need to eat or drink, eat bread. As long as I had a cup of wine or anything else, I could say lead the zimun. It's not. It's a correct statement. Let's bless the one that we ate from. I had to drink a wine or I had the vegetables or whatever I had. I should be able to say Nevarech Shachal Mishalo. However, the Gemara says no. The Gemara says having a cup of wine doesn't do it. To say to lead in the Birkat HaMazon, to lead in the Zimun. You have to have a Kazayit Lagat. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, Omar Rav Abba Bered Rav Chia bar Abba. Shimon ben Shatach the Avad. What Shimon ben Shatach did, L'garmehu the Avad. He did it. This was his own opinion. This is not the accepted opinion in the halacha. The Hachi Amar Rav Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yehuda. This is what Rav Chia bar Abba said. Hachi Amar Rav Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Sorry, Chia bar Abba says the name Rabbi Yochanan. L'olam eina motziya sarabim b'dei chavaton. You cannot say the Birkat HaMazon for other people. And sheyochal kezayit dagan, until you eat a kezayit dagan, you have to go ahead and eat the amount of kezayit dagan, the size of an olive of grain, of bread. Now, Rashi is going. Now, remember, we said by Zimun, anybody wants to be involved in Zimun, answer to Zimun, you also you're supposed to eat a kazayit. The Shulchan Aruch says, eat a kazayit. Let's say if you have 10 people, 7 had bread, 3 should have at least a kazayit, an olive size of what? Of the yerek, or a revi'it, or 3 ounces of the liquid, right? Not just a little taste. They should have a kazayit or revi'it. That's what we said the Shulchan Aruch says when it comes to 10. So now we're saying, to say Birkat HaMazon, you have a kazayit. If you ate a kazayit of bread, you could lead the zimun. Now, so Rashi says the idea of a kazayit of bread, the obligation of saying Birkat HaMazon on a kazayit, on an olive size, is a derabanan. The Torah's obligation, the obligation to say Birkat HaMazon, according to the Torah, which we had, the Torah says, if you're chalta v'savata uverachta, when you eat and you're satiated, when you had a real meal, a meal of kviyut, that you really ate an amount that's a real amount, let's say maybe more than an egg, or maybe something that fills you up, more than just a slice of bread, more than just a kazayit, that's when the Torah obligates, when you're savata. Midrabanan, the rabbi said that even when you're not savata, even when you're not satiated, just had 1 slice of bread, kasayit, you had an ounce of bread, the Rabbanan say you have the obligation rabbinic of saying Birkat HaMazon. So Rashi brings up the question, how could a person who had a kazayit, which is a rabbinic measurement, only an ounce, which is a rabbinic obligation, and the Gemara says that it's a beautiful thing of the people that they go ahead and they say Birkat HaMazon on something which is not obligated on a Torah level, They took upon themselves to say Birkat Hamazon even on the size of a Gezayit, on a much smaller level. How could a rabbinic obligation cover a biblical obligation? Someone, Yanai, the king, he has a real feast. He's really satiated. He's really full. How could the rabbinic obligation go ahead and cover the biblical obligation of a person who went ahead and was savata? So how does that's the question that Rashi proposes. So some of the Mefarshim, he brings down, the Baal Hilchos Gedolos actually holds that only a Rabbanan could be moti the Rabban. Only if you had an amount, a Torah amount, amount that's obligated in Torah, could you be moti someone who's obligated in Torah? If you had a kazayit, an olive, you can be moti someone, cover someone who had a kazayit, similar. But a kazayit cannot, someone who had a kazayit, an olive size, which is a rabbinic obligation, cannot be moti someone that has a biblical obligation. That's the opinion of the Balachos Gedolos. However, Rashi does not accept that opinion. Because our Gemara is going to say a kazayit would have worked. If you had a kazayit, an ounce of bread, you could have been motzi yanai, even though yanai had the amount of savata, of satiation, a Torah obligation. So the way Toso says, like we spoke about before, that really on a Torah, since we're all adults here, so the adult, meaning a child, cannot be motzi an adult. A child has a rabbinic responsibility, let's say, to do the mitzvah, and the adult has a biblical when the adult is satiated. But when you have two adults, each adult has a biblical obligation to say the Birkat HaMazon for the other guy, because he's responsible for the other guy. So therefore, I don't need to eat anything on a Torah level to cover you, because I have responsibility for you. It's only rabbinically that I have to eat something. Therefore, there's no question, how could a Rabbanan person eats the size of an olive? Look, Isaiah covers someone that eats an amount that he's satiated. The answer is because we're responsible for each other. So therefore, I could cover you. Even if it's only rabbinically that I need to even eat anything to cover you. I'd have to have a kazayit of bread. So that's how you could go ahead and cover the other guy. That's what the Gemara says. Then the Gemara says, the Hachi Amar Rav Chiya Rav Rav Yochanan, Oilam Einin Motzi Rami de Chavotan. You cannot be motzi the Rabbim their obligation. Ash Yoch Gazayis Dagan. Meitiveh. At least you a question. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, Allah, if you went up to the place where people are eating, and you sat with them, and you ate with the people. You only had a little vegetable in its juice, in the brine, in the juice, and you dip the vegetable in some nice liquid. And v'lo achal imam ela gegrogres achas, and or you didn't eat the vegetable. You had a date. You had a dried a fig. You had a dried fig, right? You had a grogres achas. You had a dried fig. Mitzaref, you could join into the zimun. So what do we see from here? Rabbi Yochanan said the only way, Rabbi Yochanan said you have to have a kazayit dagan. You have to have a kazayit dagan. You have to have a kazayit of bread in order to be motzi the other person. And here, the Braita seems to say, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, that even if you didn't have bread, you just had a vegetable, or you just had a dried fig. You had a vegetable or a dried fig, that's enough. to join the zimun, and the Gemara was thinking not only you could join the zimun, you could even go ahead and lead the zimun, even though you didn't have bread. So the Gemara answers no. It's the rufe mitzaref. You could join a zimun. By the way, this Gemara definitely seems to, this brisa seems to indicate like the third opinion in the Shulchan Aruch that says that the third guy does not need, you don't need all three to have bread. That the third guy could go ahead and have some other food, like a vegetable. Because here we have the guy mitzaref. Sounds like even for the zimun of three, he could go ahead and join in. So like the third opinion of the Shulchan Aruch. So guess what the Gemara says? It's the rufe mitzaref. This guy, by having the vegetable, he could join the zimun, but to lead the zimun, to cover everybody else with the birkat hamazon, it's not good enough that he had a vegetable. Rather, he needs ashiyos kazayit dagan. He needs to eat a kazayit dagan, size of a olive size of grain. Itmanami, of grain meaning of bread. Itmanami, omrav china ba Yehuda mishmei derava. Afilu lo, now we're turning the page. Afilu lo tava limayim, even lo tava tiba limayim elabitzir. Even if you only took a vegetable and you dipped it in the brine, you dipped it in some liquid, or you only ate one dried fig, mitzaref, you could join the zimun, but you could be one of the members of the zimun. But to lead the zimun, even though we're responsible for each other, and I'm responsible for you, but still, I know me to lead the zimun on a rabbinic level. The rabbis required, if you want, even though on a Torah level, you can be motzi the guy, even without eating anything, but the rabbis require, motzi, you cannot be motzi ashiyocha gazayit dagan. You have to eat the kazayit of dagan. You have to eat an olive of bread. Olive size. Rav China by Yehuda Shei Rava. Hilchasa, the law is achal ale yerek. If you ate a vegetable leaf, the shasa, or you drank kol shel yayin, cup of wine, mitzaref, you could join to a zimun, but lahotzi einem motzi ashyoch gazayis dagan. But to be motzi the rabim, to cover everybody else, you cannot cover everybody else unless you ate a kazayit dagan. If you want to lead the zimun, you have to have a kazayit dagan. So here again, we see in the Gemara, the language of the Gemara also indicates, it sounds like it's talking about even a zimun of three people, you don't need the third guy to actually have bread, even doesn't need to have mizonot, a vegetable, or here it says wine. So the question to me is, why does it emphasize wine? Unless we say, what about a liquid that's not wine? I mean, the way it seems the Chafetz Chaim was learning was that, all the drinks sound like food. So I don't know why we have to look more at the emphasis of wine. Why does this emphasize wine? But if you want to be motzi everybody, you need to have a kazayit dagan. You need to have you have to have bread. You have to have a kazayit of bread. See, it also the Yalkut Yosef also says, if he doesn't want to eat bread, the third guy, and he wants to join the zimun, you could give him some fruit or vegetables or a cup of wine. Also, why is he emphasizing wine? What about some other beverage? That needs to be looked into. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. All the best to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Good day. You too. Make sure he doesn't disturb your driving.
Well, she,
Yes.
no, she's a good dog. You just
gotta
do
be-
like this. You see? She's
Yeah,
like,
very
okay, I'm
good.
leaving.
Be careful with the driving, Yosef. Take care. Have a great day.
All right.